And thank you for staying with us. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sharon Angle and a little. Yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. And for rebroadcast of our shows, please check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. Like us, friend us, and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. And with that, Sharon Angle, we have our first guest with us. Please welcome him to the show.
It's my pleasure to welcome Matthew Vadum, a senior vice president at Capital Research Center, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. Matthew Vadum's work has been cited by Fox News, WND.com, Weekly Standard, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Christian Science Monitor, and many other media outlets. Matthew is an award-winning investigative journalist. Matthew, welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
You know, Matthew, it's great to have a journalist on our show. You know, often we get reporters, and there's a big difference. Investigating journalism is almost a lost art these days.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, not too many people, are interested in digging, I guess. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and you've dug something out for us. Neo-Nazis on campus. The biggest neo-Nazi threat is coming from the left to a college near you. That's kind of scary, Matthew. Talk to us a little bit about this, because you dug deep to find this.
An article that I wrote a couple of days ago at frontpagemag.com, and there is a burgeoning neo-Nazi movement that people don't seem to think about on campuses across America, and it's not what the mainstream media will tell you. It's not alt-right people. I guess they exist, and some of them are baddies, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are actual inheritors of the Nazi ideology, and that is Students for Justice in Palestine and related groups that want to have a second Holocaust. They're virulently anti-Semitic. And yet they are widely accepted on campuses across America. In fact, many of them get grants from the administrations on the various campuses. So they are widely accepted. And this is a bad thing. And the idea of the article was to draw attention to that and to emphasize a campaign that David Horowitz Freedom Center is putting together, or that's already in action, highlight the fact that there are these people on campus, and that they're a danger, and people should know about it.
Well, first, let's go into some of these campuses. I mean, a campus near you is right here in California. I'm in Nevada, and of course, many of our graduates from high school do go to California schools. And you say that they've canvassed pretty much these California universities. Talk to us a little bit about how they do that and which universities they've already gotten a really strong toehold in.
Okay, well, they're all across America, so it's kind of hard to limit the discussion, but they seem to be especially strong in places in parts of California, for example, and the University of California system, which would include Berkeley and UCLA. They're also at University of Southern California, and they're at San Francisco State. And one of them is a professor at Berkeley, Hatem Bazian, who is a founder of Students for Justice in Palestine. And most of the time, he doesn't make any bones about the fact that he wants. What's that expression the left, the anti-Israel left uses? They want to push Jews into the sea. They want to obliterate the state of Israel, and that's what these people stand for. And if these activists from Muslim Students Association and Students for Justice in Palestine, if they were to wear white robes and white pointy hoods, then people would be upset. But because they're not, because these people are, Arabs and of Muslim, and being Muslims, people, the left, the mainstream media, they don't get upset about it. They're accepted. So anti-Semitism is okay, depending on how you look, apparently, depending on the color of your skin.
Well, this should be extremely concerning, I guess, to the Jewish population here in the United States, which is actually larger than the one in Israel, because some of these statements are just outrageous. How many Jews died in the Holocaust? Not enough. Wow, white Jews are so entitled. LMFA quadruple zero, please die. Oh my gosh, it's horrible.
Laughing my effing ass off. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Please die. Yep.
Really horrible things.
This isn't much different than the kind of propaganda that was put out by the Nazis in the lead up to seizing power in 1933 and after that. Just constant anti-Jewish propaganda, and it's a very ugly thing. And I say that I'm not Jewish myself, but this is just this is a terrifying thing, and it's something that we need to throw some light on.
And when you look at history and the Holocaust in Germany, where the Nazis, we kind of focus on what they did to the Jewish population, but almost or more Christians died in that same Holocaust. So our entire nation should be very, very concerned about this kind of a movement getting any kind of a toehold here.
Yeah, and it operates under the radar, and people are afraid to criticize groups like MSA and Students for Justice in Palestine because they're Muslim, and people, it's politically incorrect to criticize them. They're untouchable, I suppose, because they're Muslim, and it's a combination of it. Americans don't want to be perceived as not being nice to outsiders, and you combine that with political correctness, and these people can get away with murder.
So who knows about this, or are you just the first to sound the alarm? I guess I'm wanting to know, are there Christian groups, are there Jewish groups that are out there, and are they fighting back? I understand that you have cited one group, so talk to us about the pushback against this movement and how we can get involved in that, I guess.
Well, there isn't much pushback, and that's why the David Horowitz Freedom Center is trying to lead it by putting together a postering campaign, showing examples of this egregious, hateful propaganda against Jews, and singling out people who on campus who are part of this hateful movement, whether they're activists or whether they're professors. So this is an effort to create some pushback, to create a backlash against it, by simply letting people, what's the left's phrase for this? This is consciousness raising. Right, it is. It's consciousness raising. It's a teaching moment, right?
That's right. We're into consciousness raising right here on Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We need to go to a break. Matthew Vadum is our special guest. Can you stay through the break with us, Matthew? And we'll get on the other side with Anna Little. I know that she's going to want to continue this conversation.
Certainly.
Okay, here at Consciousness Raising Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We're coming to you from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios and around the world on internet with TalkStream Live, iHeartRadio, iTunes, American Political Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. We'll be right back after these messages with Anna Little, Rick Trader, our producer, and I'm Sharon Angle.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. And a shout out to our stations in Jacksonville, Tampa and the Villages, Florida, Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Colorado Springs and Boulder, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Long Beach, California. More reasons why we say we are everywhere. We are everywhere. And Anna Little, our guest, is still with us. Please pick up the conversation.
I am honored to do so, Rick. Listeners, we are speaking with Matthew Vadum. He's Senior Vice President at the Capital Research Center, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., and he's been speaking with us about neo-Nazis on campus, how the biggest neo-Nazi threat is actually coming from the left to a college near you. It's an article that he's written. Matthew, thank you so much for waiting through that break. We do appreciate your time.
Great. I'm happy to help out.
So I've been listening to your conversation with Sharon, and I'm a little confused. I thought the liberal left wanted safe spaces on college campuses where nobody could say anything that disagreed with what anyone else was thinking or saying. And now suddenly we have these neo-Nazis cropping up. How can this be? Can you explain this incongruity?
Well, it's because they don't. It's because the left, which thoroughly dominates campuses and the media and academia and so on, considers this type of Jew hatred to be perfectly acceptable because it's done by Muslim groups, and they don't want to criticize. They refuse to criticize Muslims no matter what they do. And this gives them basically a blank check to do whatever they want to do, and they parade their anti-Semitism and their hatred of the state of Israel around pretty openly. And they attack things that Americans hold dear every day. Most Americans support Israel. We recognize that it is an outpost of Western civilization surrounded by totalitarian Muslim majority countries that would like to destroy it. And we're sympathetic to Israel, and yet they are not. They are not tolerant, and they want to. Some of them want to, launch a second Holocaust, and they are a real danger. And as I was saying to Sharon in the earlier segment, that people would be upset if they were dressed in white robes with pointy white hoods, but because they're not, it's harder to get people upset. It's that kind of visual aid helps people to get upset, but then we don't have it here.
Yeah, but Matthew, I think maybe we are not identifying this kind of Muslim aggression properly. I mean, there's a very far right wing of the Muslim. Well, some argue it's all Muslim religion. I think there may be some moderates that you could probably live with, and we have some of those living here in the United States. But the right wing, certainly, of the Muslim geopolitical force really is looking for world domination. And the way they're doing that is through the young people they're indoctrinating. They're doing it in their home countries, but they're also doing it here in the United States. They've infiltrated the jails the imams there are identifying themselves as religious leaders, and they are speaking to criminals who are supposed to be rehabilitating, and they're talking about these right-wing Muslim ideas of overtaking the world and who's the infidel and what's permissible with the infidel. And I think they may be doing this in the universities as well. And I wonder if we're missing or we're misidentifying what's going on in the universities. Perhaps it is part of this larger movement rather than just bias by a single Muslim against a single Jew, or a small group of Muslim against a small group of Jews. I mean, perhaps this is an overall strategy. What are your thoughts about any of that?
Well, I don't know that I'd put Islam. I don't think that it neatly fits on the left-right political spectrum. But apart from that, I agree with everything that you're saying, that these are dangerous radicals who are taking, who are trying to carry out, what it says in the Quran, the harshest parts of it, which call for the killing of Jews, and that's what it boils down to. And there's lots of support for this in the Muslim world, and there's a surprising amount of support for it even among Muslims in Western countries such as the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, and even here, though probably to a lesser extent. So these are dangerous ideas, and very few people have been fighting it up until now. And that's why the postering campaign and the pamphlets that David Horowitz Freedom Center put together are so important in letting people know about these lingering dangers on the nation's university campuses.
Yeah, and I do think we have to be very mindful when we're watching the incongruity of what the left is putting out there. I think it's propaganda, and I'm talking about our political left here in the United States, the very far liberal left. I believe it's propaganda because when a conservative speaker comes to Berkeley, he's shut down or she's shut down, and there's violence in reaction to that, and there's a lack of tolerance for anything that person has to say. But if these particular anti-Semites want to stand up and say hateful things, then that's okay. And yet they talk about safe spaces to protect themselves against Christians or conservatives. But when that anti-Semite stands up, well, they have the right to say whatever they want to say. This is not free speech. This is indoctrination. And this idea of safe spaces is not about safety at all. It's about tyranny versus liberty, and there just isn't any liberty on college campuses anymore. Do you want to say some final thoughts? We have to go to, we're ending our segment, but I want to give you the last word.
Okay, well, there's a climate of intimidation. A chill wind is blowing across America's university campuses, and if you stand up to these groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, you are going to be demonized and attacked, and your life made miserable. There's a documentary coming out later this year called No Safe Spaces that actually deals with the issue of safe spaces on campus, and it's got Adam Carolla and Dennis Prager in it, and it looks to be pretty interesting, and it just talks about how the intellectual weaklings that dominate today's university campuses, and the way they coddle each other and try to shield each other from ideas that may challenge the way they look at the world. Universities are indoctrination factories. They're basically the think tanks of the left nowadays.
Well, we're going to have to do something about that. But unfortunately, here at Conservative Commandos, we have to leave it at that for today. So, Matthew, quickly tell our listeners where they can follow you and pick up more information on this and other important issues.
Okay, well, I write frequently for FrontpageMag.com. My personal website's Matthew Vadum. That's MatthewVadum.com. My day job is Senior Vice President at Capital Research Center, which is a great think tank. I'm biased because I work there, and that's at capitalresearch.org.
Thank you so much for taking this time with us today on Conservative Commandos Radio Show. Matthew Vadum, come back and see us again soon.
Yeah, a pleasure. Great. Thank you.